Hello, everyone, and this is the sixth and final episode of Lego Mech design. Today, I will be showing you 5 essential tips and tricks, at least for me, in building a Lego Mech that will hopefully help you out. Hopefully, I can use this final episode as a way to solidify the ideas throughout the series. There's going to be a bit of new stuff and a bit of old stuff. But remember, these are based almost purely on my own experiences with Lego and building. Some may work for you, some may not. Just go ahead and use what does work for you. Let's begin. Every part counts, and I mean every part. This is relevant to the parts budget we started out with in episode 1, I think, where we talked about picking your parts, sorting them out, nulling them out, and separating them into 2 groups so that they're in symmetrical groups, so that if you build, for example, armor for one side, you'll have enough pieces for the other without having to worry about running out of parts. What I mean by every part counts, actually, is when you're actually putting together those pieces, use pieces that you wouldn't think would really matter. I can say the times this has saved me from like a creative wall that I got to. For example, in the arms on this mech, I used this rubber band piece, the rubber band holders. And these were great. I used 3 of them. I used the 2 small ones and 1 big one. And they worked great. They're like large pieces. They covered a lot of space. And fantastic. Problem solved. So just remember, every part, even what would seem as the most insignificant and weird, counts. Two, focus points. What I refer to as focus is what you want the viewer to focus on when they see your mech. To kind of explain myself, in these 2 examples, you have this one by Brian Kishenovitz. I'm not sure how that's pronounced, but he's also known as Monday Noodle on Flickr. You can see this really cool quadruped mech. And when you look at it, the first thing you notice isn't actually the legs in itself. Obviously, it has legs, but the thing that really brings your focus in is the main torso or pod section. It has the most detail, has the most amount of interesting pieces. You can see all the bionicle bits and other stuff that he focused on to make sure that when somebody looks at his mech, they see that as the best part of the mech. Here in another example, in Izo Mech, as I usually use his mechs, isn't actually the mech itself. The mech is not the focus point, but its rifle. The rifle is the biggest part, and if someone looks at it, they're probably going to remember that part of the mech as the most important one. And the focus point of my mech is the torso. And being that the focus, I decided to start with that. So then I used my best pieces, my most important pieces, on that part. As you can see, I used this windshield bit, these mud or tire guards for the arms, the arm sockets, and most of my lime green went into this section, or at least a large chunk. You can see these large chunks of color over the shoulders. So, where you decided your focus point to be, where you want people to look at the most, use your best pieces. Make the best design. Just make it the most interesting so it ends up being a worthy focus point. 3, know how to use the frame. Before in the series, we talked a bit about how there's a distinction between the frame and the armor pieces, and usually they're pretty much balanced out. My first example mech was really close to the type of mechs that you would see in anime and Gundam and all that stuff. But in this mech, I decided to go in a completely different direction and do something a little bit different. I decided to use the frame to my advantage. When I was planning out the mech, I wanted to make it a bit more top heavy. Have most of the armor and stuff on top. concentrated on the torso and the arm sections, and the rest, the legs would pretty much be uncovered, or at least just have less as it gets down to the feet. I'd suggest you to do something similar. It'll help your mech distinguish itself from the others. Four, follow a rhythm. Using S and C curves, also known as gesture in art and design, might look a little bit complicated if you're trying to build a mech, but it's actually a lot easier than you'd think. Rhythm is really important for keeping your mech consistent. Just don't worry about it when you're building. Start to worry about it when you're finding problems with your mech that you can't spot at first sight. For example, in my mech, when I was building it, I had two possible configurations for the leg. Here you can see the first configuration. It kind of curves up, changes direction, and goes backwards. It doesn't really work. It looks pretty wonky and weird. So by tweaking it a little bit, I got this really nice S-curve that worked, and it looked like a really nice chicken leg. So to sum it up, if you have a problem with a joint or a leg or the mech in general, establishing a rhythm in forms of S and C curves can usually fix it for you and make your mech a lot better. Number 5, shape hierarchy. Again, sounds pretty complicated, but it's a lot simpler when you understand. All this has to do is with the relationship between big shapes and smaller shapes or details. Let's go back to this diagram of this mech we had. As you can see, you have, again, the distinction between armor pieces and the frame pieces. The frame or detail parts occupy a lot less than the actual armor parts. Try to do the same with your mech. Form a distinction between large shapes and smaller shapes or detail shapes. Here you can see my mech. I try to do the same little principle as with the armor unarmored. The top section has the larger shapes with the rubber band holders and the large lime green pieces. And as it goes down towards the legs, it has less and less armor parts. So pretty much summing up this last tip, distinction between large shapes and small shapes or details, and try to get a balance between the two so you have large shapes and a lot less of detail shapes. Hope that kind of made sense. So those were 5 tips that will hopefully help you to improve your mech designs. Hope they're useful, that you can use a couple. And just to finish up this mech section, I'm going to make step-by-step instructions for this mech that you see. There's going to be entire video commentary and photos of the pieces. So that'll be the next video. Hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.